there, it's Paulie here. Here I am, back home with Mr. Snoots. Ever cheerful. Couple of companions as wingmen. So, anyway, long ago, I used to hang out with a wonderful friend called Damien. We're talking the 80s here, and, we were Star Trek fans because, it was so cool. Amarella Design Bureau brought out these amazing pocket games. Starfleet Battles. Starfleet Battles is still going today. It's one of the truly great survivors. It's a truly great game. You should play it, and I will show you why. So, what I have here is a box set that came out, and it's a good one. It's the one I'm going to recommend. So, you can get the Starfleet Battles. It's the Captain's Edition basic set. This is sort of still out here, you can find it. There are many other Starfleet Battles things, but the basic set is great. Now, the basic set inside, there is a box. Inside the box, there is this damned heavy set of rules. And some other cool things that you'll need to play. They've got everything you need. They've got counter sheets, they've got maps, they've got reference sheets for all of the ships. And some pre-done order sheets, turn sheets, they've got the impulse charts, they've got the weapons charts, they've got all that sort of stuff, all the ref charts you could possibly need. They've even got some dice. Yay! All right, so what is this game? Okay, way back in the beginnings of time, if you wanted to do a Star Trek product, you contacted Michelle Barrett, and you paid a very nominal fee, and provided you sent her a copy and she looked through and the quality was good, you got a license to do it. So these guys decided they wanted to do a game of ship-to-ship combat in the Star Trek universe, Star Wars. So they did it. That is Starfleet Battles. Now, this started off as a pocket game, which had the basics. It had Klingons versus Federation, and it had the ships which, at the end of the 70s and so on, before the first Star Trek movies and so on came out, these were the ships that were in the guidebooks to the ships of that universe. So at that stage, they had here's the Federation cruiser. They've built a dreadnought. So here's what the dreadnought looks like. It's got 3 nacelles, not 2. Here's a lighter version of the cruiser. Here is because they'd been sort of slower than light wars with the Federation versus the Romulans earlier. So here's what the Federation light cruiser looks like. It's an old, slower than light vessel that's now been upgraded with warp nacelles, but it's got some kind of older tech in it. Nice. Yeah, actually, I love those things. Here's the Destroyer, which is a saucer with a single nacelle under it. Here's the Scout, which looks very similar but has a slightly different function, isn't so weapon heavy. Here's the Klingon, battle cruisers and D7s and frigates, and okay. Then they brought out other supplements. Here's the Romulan ships, and they went through things like the Star Trek animated series. Niven had written for the animated series, so he'd inevitably brought his own race in called the Kzin. Not really appropriate that they're there, but what the hell? There they are in Star Trek canon. So they brought in Xinti ships. They thought, let's put in some different weapons and so on, and put this, work this up a bit. They put in Tholians, our friends, the little crystalline creatures, from the Tholian Web episode. Then they put in some other races. Well, the Gorn. Let's put the Gorn in. Well, we never really saw exactly what weapons they do. Let's, put some slight differences in their weapons. Then they started to put in the Andromedans, so they put in some interest. The Hydrons, these are the different races that came out of various bits of publications at the time. When the movies came out, these guys decided, you can do upgrades. Here's the Enterprise that's upgraded. So they did kind of upgrade versions, etc. That's when Paramount started to step in and said, whoa, because they've seen the success of Star Wars, selling toys and so on, and they wanted to do an atomic ton of Star Trek toys. We can monetize this. But these guys have got a license. So basically, lawyers, in the end, they decided, right, you guys have the right to work with what you've got, but that's going to be the Starfleet universe. The stuff that happens in that isn't canon, and the stuff that happens, you're not allowed to use any of our stuff. You can't use Next Gen and beyond, and you can't use movies beyond the first. That's it. You have to stop right there. In fact, you can't really use the movie thing, but whatever. So, what's interesting is that the Starfleet universe, therefore, is really the true inheritor of Star Trek, the original series. Everything in it comes logically from Star Trek, the original series, and the animated series that was a direct follow-on from Star Trek TOS. Which is great, because things like Next Gen and so on brought in pointless bullshit that just destroyed the whole thing. Holodecks and, it's like it really screws things up. But this is great. So, over to the game itself. It is a very complex game. But mostly because of the wealth of extra material in it. The core of it is dirt simple. And so I'm going to have to help you almost translate it a bit, because look at the size of the rules. This is the basic rules. But what they've had to do is put in lots of ipso factos, and if you've got these other products, that's how they would tie in. But these are basically the revised rules. At its core, what we have are ships, and these ships are represented on the SSD. It's a Starship design sheet, which looks like this. Wonderful 80s graphics there. It's all done in boxes. That's a Federation heavy cruiser, USS Enterprise style. What we've got are shields. So the game works on hexes. The shield at the top, frontal facing of the ship, is shield number 1, and as we go around, shield number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These shields have strength, which is represented by these boxes. Your ship, everything in it, the impulse drives, the warp drives, the phasers, everything has boxes in it. As you take damage, the boxes are crossed off. Now, when you take damage, it comes off your shields first. That damage kind of permanently carves into the shields. Once the shields are gone, if the ship has armor, which some of the old sublight ships do, so the Federation light cruiser and the good old Romulan warbirds, you then have to take it off armor. And then you get to the soft, meaty, yum, yum, yum insides, and you start crossing off all of these boxes here, which are your phasers and your life support and your command and your engines and so on. So, at the start of your turn, you'll count up the power that you generate. That comes from your impulse engines, your boxes here, and your warp engines, the boxes there. However, how much power you generate is written on the other side of the sheet to start off with. But obviously, as you take damage, it'll go down. You then allocate that power. Now, to have your shields just on like minimum, like 5 points on a side, you just bung a point of power in there. If you have your shields on full, depends on the size of the ship, but it'll cost you some more points to have your shields on full, and they're on at their full value. You can throw power into general reinforcement of the shields. The amount of power you throw in, you halve it, and that's added to every single shield around you. So if I put 10 points in, I add 5 to the power of every shield around me. You can specifically reinforce a specific shield. The amount of power you put into that is placed onto a specific shield. So if I take that 10 points of power and I reinforce shield number 1, I've got 10 points on it. This can be useful if that shield has completely collapsed. You can use power to somehow try and fend off some damage if that shield has been beaten down by enemy fire. So, power is also used for firing the weapons. You have to charge weapons. It costs you a point or so for each phaser and so on that you're going to fire. If you've got things like photon torpedoes, you have to charge them up over 2 turns. You have to put like 2 points into each torpedo, and you have to do that over 2 turns before you can fire them. So you have to kind of pre-plan firing the torpedoes. Also, photon torpedoes, you actually have to pay power to hold them in the tubes once you've charged them. So if you charge them up and haven't fired yet, it's going to cost you not a ton of power, but it's going to cost you power to hold them. So ideally you don't want to do that. You also spend power on movement. You've got impulse, that just moves you 1 hex a turn because it's slower than light. Other than that, your warp power will move you speeding across the board. If you cross, I think, speed 31, basically you're getting so fast that you can't really you engage anymore, and basically that's for disengaging and fleeing. But You can also use power for putting into damage repair projects, teleporting, running the teleporters. They've got some advanced rules where you can do electronic warfare, where you can kind of put power into trying to scramble the other guy's sensors and trying to stop the other guy from scrambling your sensors. You don't need that, but it's in there. And that's the thing. And that's why these rules are so big, because they've got lots of, here's the basic game, here's a slightly more advanced game that they call the captain's game, and here's like the commander's game, which is more advanced. You don't have to use all of these options, but we've got them in there because we've got nigh 50 years of publishing history and putting out supplements and magazines, and these are rules people came up with. A charming thing about the movement system, and the thing that really makes the game, is the impulse system. So what they've got is, once you allocate that power, right, there's a chart that's split, a turn is now split into 32 impulses. Depending on how fast you were going, there's a little thing that tells you what impulses of the turn you move on. So for instance, if I was moving, if I was only moving about 4, okay, I'm going to move every quarter section of this movement. So I'll move on what? 8, 16, 24, 32 probably. Those are the impulses I'll be moving on the map. If someone's moving 16 hexes a turn, they're going to move every second turn. So they might move on 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So this is how you actually kind of integrate the movement of things going slower and faster. When it is your turn, you may spend you spend all this movement. When it's your turn in the impulse, you can pivot if you're allowed to, 1 hex phase, and then you move forward a hex. You have a turning rate. The faster you're moving, the slower you turn, which means basically the faster you move, the more hexes you've got to move in a straight line before you're allowed to turn 1 hex phase. However, you can spend power on high energy turns. We kind of reverse one of the engines, and you can pivot any way you want. But this does damage to the ship. Initially, you have to roll for a breakdown. Initially, everyone can just do it, but every extra time you do it, you're basically subtracting from the dice roll. So everyone can do it maybe once in a game, but when you start really flinging it around, you stand a substantial chance of basically flaming your warp engines out and coming to a screeching halt, and then you're not allowed to fire for half a turn while you kind of desperately try and rewire the ship. So there's these kind of interesting little things. There's also some cunning things you can do with power. You can suddenly do emergency braking and emergency accelerations. So you can hold some power in reserve for these kind of emergencies. So the power planning is cunning. The movement integrates everything beautifully. Now, you can also fire in any impulse. Each weapon that you've charged can only fire once in a turn. So there's a kind of a game of chicken to it. Obviously, it's easier to hit when you are closer. However, some weapons, like, say, the photon torpedoes, you have to really be a hex or 2 away for them to be fired at you. Some ships, like the Klingon guys, they have disruptors on them, which are really kind of long-range weapons. They're not that dangerous, but they can ping you at long range. So in a way, the Klingons kind of want to keep you right out there. The Federation are very aggressive. They've got these massively destructive photon torpedoes that are quite close ranged. They want to race in and go, nose to nose with you. So you're trying to sort of move in a way, if the other guy fires off weapons, then you might have the opportunity to zoom in to a range where your weapons are more efficient and he can't fire back. As you've taken damage and the shields have gone down too, you might want to start turning to present shields to the other guy that haven't taken damage yet and kind of spread that damage around so that he's not gnawing a hole that lets him get to the meaty underbelly of your ship. Weapons also have set arcs of fire, so choosing, if you fired like your left-hand phasers on something that's got them split up, well, now you probably want to turn to bring the phasers on the other side to bear. So it's a game of maneuver. And at this, it really excels. There are, like I said, there are atomic butt-ton of extra rules that appeared over time. So they put in rules for boarding. For instance, if someone's shields are down, you might not want to close in and blow them up. You might want to teleport, security teams over there and try and take them, particularly if he's taken damage to his crew. So they've got rules for trying to board the ship. If the guy's decided to trigger self-destruct, you've got rules there for stopping him from doing it if you've got guys over there. And obviously if the ship blows up, they put rules for what happens if your ship is too close. Shuttles, you can do things with shuttles. You can try essentially stuffing them full of antimatter and sending them out as a drone to try and smash into people. There are shuttles you can fill up with essentially scatter packs of missiles to throw at people. There's the Wild Weasel, which you can create as essentially a drone that basically is sending out crazy signals to interfere with the other side, or to make it look more attractive to enemies than your ship. So if he's somehow fired homing weapons, they'll home in on it rather than your ship. Because they have put missiles and drone missiles in there, and some races have missiles. In fact, as the thing went on, everyone ends up with 1 or 2 drones on them that they can kind of fire. And there are anti-missile missiles that they put in, and small phases for shooting at missiles, because these guys got quite taken by the idea of missiles, obviously. The Federation Scouts are kind of interesting because if you get into the electronic warfare thing, what the Scout is doing is it's not really a close combat ship. It doesn't do much, but what it does is it creates electronic warfare that it gives to its own side. So normally you can only put a certain amount of power into screwing up the other guy's firing or protecting yourself from him screwing up your firing. Your own sensors are as much power as you can feed through it, but the Scout can basically lend you its power to do that as well. So, so it's an annoying little bastard. The Kzinti, they sort of put them down. These guys have shuttles that are dedicated fighters. I think the Hydrons have them too. And they're a shuttle that's basically designed to close in and shoot at people. So they've got kind of small craft fighter rules in there. And these guys have carriers, which are designed to have a swarm of fighters, which, fine. So there was a lot of kind of World War II-y kind of inspiration there for some of these things, which they work. They give a different game. So each of these races has its own flavour. The Romulans have got cloaking devices. They've got a big plasma weapon. That's a homing weapon that homes in towards you. That's where you might want a Wild Weasel shuttle prepared, because you're going to try and send this thing off as a decoy. The Romulans in the original Star Trek, they're slower than light, but the Klingons, who want them as a spoiler to help screw up the Federation, they actually start exporting their own vessels to the Romulans, and the Romulans basically start retro-engineering warp drive and so on, and learn it. They learn it from the Klingons. So all of their systems are Klingons, and they get Klingon vessels, which is why you get Romulan bird images painted onto Klingon vessels. That was sort of why they were doing that. The Klingons don't have birds painted on their vessels. The Romulans do. That's why I said it's kind of the true inheritor of TOS. Difficulties of the game? Well, obviously there's all these extra rules to wade through. You have to go through and decide what you're playing. We are just playing the basics. We are playing the basics, but look, if it looked like it was worthwhile doing a boarding action, we're going to allow it. We're doing basics, but this guy's in love with the electronic warfare thing, so we'll put them in there. They don't really achieve much, but if you feel like doing it, you can. It's just another way of wasting power, to be honest. You build up on a decision of what optional rules that you are going to allow. So this book is daunting initially, and it's literally as dry as a pile of dead leaves to read through. It really is. But it is very clear. It's clearly laid out because it's from good old board game design days. And what it really is a massive, first off, options for you to use. And the second half of it is largely discussions of the different ships. It's got a whole campaign system in there. It's got historical scenarios in there, ones taken from the actual shows. It's got monster scenarios, which I love. We get to fight the giant space amoebas and all that sort of thing. It's got a rundown on each of the nations. It's got rundown on terrain and how you can put that on the board and how that's going to affect things, your asteroids, planets, nebulas, all these sorts of cool things if you want them, ion storms, all this kind of stuff is in there. So it's full of a ton of things. So this kind of, you'll find a lot of aficionados of the game because it is so clear and it has been around for so long. Like anything that's been around for a long time, and any game that people decide to run competitions for, you get some complete assholes who play it. Just avoid them. There are some people who somehow think they've got a magical ability to win this game. You find that in DBM style stuff as well. People who just think, oh, I'm so good at rules lawyership that I'll win. No, you won't. Nothing's going to stop you from losing if, you know, that guy playing the Romulan ship pops out and fires that giant plasma beam at you just as you've expended every single way of avoiding it. You know, it's a game. Welcome to the wonderful world of just playing games with your friends. There are miniatures for this, and they're great. You know, they're about that big. They pan it really well. It's a great way of having a cool Star Trek fleet, and it doesn't have the silliness that some later Star Trek has descended into, where you've got these massive, ridiculous fleets with 500,000 different ship types. It's like, no, navies tend to be pretty crisp and clear about the kind of things that come off from their slip yards. You don't have that many variants because each one of these has got its own special maintenance required. This is a good set of rules. It's had the bones to survive, no pun intended, for all these years. And it survived because it gives you a great game. That impulse system is wonderful. Yeah, he agrees. The impulse system is really wonderful. That system of just splitting up your power and then, you know, moving on those impulses and then picking the moments when you fire and picking the moments when you're going to like generally reinforce your shields when to shore something up, or when you're going to use the power to like massively overcharge your weapons so they do more damage. So, you know, when am I going defensive? When am I going offensive? Those are great. Those are core game risk and reward procedures, which is the core of any good game. So this game has its risk and reward procedures. It's got its resource management. That's good gaming in its purest form. Well worth playing if you haven't played it. If you have played it in the past, it's still around and it's good, and you can get it. Like, you may have lost it or whatever. Go get the Captain's Basic Rulebook. It's got everything you need to play again, and you can get all these other supplements and things. They'll mostly be more ships, more crazy ship types to use and so on. This has everything you need in this basic set. It really does have everything you need. So I think that's a great product. I'm personally really glad to see these guys are still in operation, because this was always a good game and I love the Starfleet universe. Now, I did a review long ago on a role-playing game called Prime Directive. You might want to look back through my reviews to find that one, because this is done by these guys and it's the role-playing game in the Starfleet Battles universe. And it's really good. It's really worth looking forward to. The designer's a great guy. He did a great job. And it is still probably the best of the of the Star Trek role-playing games. It's really, really a good one and really worth finding. I like it. It's a good piece of work. So anyway, here we go. Alive and well and still firing a full spread of photon torpedoes. Starfleet Battles. It's a great classic, and it's a classic for a reason. It works and it's enormously good fun. That's one hell of a legacy for any game to leave behind. Anyway, cheers everyone. Snoots. Wee. Tuffy. And wee, Nerny. We will continue doing the reviews. If you like the reviews, please find me on Patreon. Hit like, hit subscribe. And also to the community out there, as I've said, it's very hard for independent game designers to get their material known. So if you get material out and published, by all means, please contact me. And yeah, I'm always happy to review. It's very hard for us to get news out that we have games. So if this helps, then hey, I'm serving the community I love. Anyway, see you guys around the gaming table someday. Keep gaming. Keep being the best possible ambassadors for our hobby. And cheers, everyone. Hope to see you all in person someday. Bye.